to the RunRX podcast, where we talk about all things running. As many runners know, it's 90% mental. So join Coach Valerie and Coach Caroline as we go through the mental side of running. Welcome back to the RunRX podcast. I'm your host, Coach Caroline, and I'm here with Coach Valerie. Coach, you were recently talking to one of our members about mobility in his neck and his shoulders. Can you share with our audience like what you had him do and what the issue was?
Sure. So one of the things that I help people with is their, we call it the running pose, but it's really your overall posture. And we start with standing. So what sometimes we see, especially in older people, is their head has traveled forward. And the only way to get your head back on the line is to do a series of exercises that you put yourself on that line. And one of the limiters is range of motion, both, yes, in the neck and in the shoulder. So we combine stretching with strengthening for that area, because something to keep in mind is your head is the heaviest part of your body. And when you're standing, your body is always trying to balance your head. That is the goal of your body. So if your head is a little bit in front of you, there's a lot of extra effort going on to try to balance your head. And you see this with older people, they kind of tip forward and then their feet they can't keep up. They can't pick up their feet quick enough.
Right.
So we really work on putting people back in their line. So one of the things that happens is, say, most runners, and again, I'm just generalizing over what I've seen over years and years of training, is when they do weight training. So like if you say to a runner, hey, you need to go to the gym and do strength training, a lot of runners will do things like a bench press or a push up, a row, a pull down, maybe a pull up even. Rarely do we see runners pressing weight overhead. And this is really common because those aren't common exercises just in general. Most guys will bench press. We don't see a lot of overhead press. So we start to train the overhead position because doing a combination of shoulder mobility. Now, this is important. We use a broomstick or PVC pipe. That is what we start everybody with.
Right.
Zero weight. And this is important because for a lot of people, so we'll use Jim, when I ask them to raise their arms up, they actually physically cannot bring their arm straight up. So if you can imagine a clock, like I want you to be 12 o'clock. I want you to be the 12 o'clock line on the clock with your arms overhead. Almost, not almost, but almost all of any, usually the men especially, their hands are like at 1 o'clock, with perception being that they actually are at 12. So what's limiting them? It's the ability, it's range of motion, and it's also strength. But again, it's not just a core strength. It's got to be a full body strength. So I'll pause there for a minute because one of the best parts about what we do is everybody benefits from that. And imagine if you started working on your upper body line in your 20s or 30s rather than your late 60s, what a difference it would make.
Right. And it's really amazing when you talk about that. That's one of the things that I notice a lot. And we've talked about this. Some has nothing just to do with phones, but I feel like it's going to get worse now that we have phones.
Yeah.
I didn't grow up with a cell phone, but I do find myself looking down a lot more. I have to, focus on looking up. Like we talk about the range of motion in my shoulders, really making sure I put my head back. That hump that we get, that calcification, right, that comes up because you've kept your head in the wrong position. And I think we don't realize that that's a mobility issue. That's not just age, right?
By the way, yeah, and like friends don't let friends get humps on their backs. Ladies, seriously, I'm not kidding.
No, I know. I'm laughing because I know you say that to all of us that work out with you.
Oh my gosh. I actually just was teasing this morning. So this woman I used to work with, her coach, she has really tight shoulders and she hunches them forward. And so I really worked on her to open her shoulders and do this range of motion work. So she said to me, "Well, when do I get to quit? Have I done it enough?"
Oh,
And I'm like, "No, there's no quit." And guys, I look at my parents. My dad is totally bent over. I mean,
yeah.
it's been just years of poor posture, and he has tripped and fallen twice. He's in his 80s, and I work on him so much to stand up and pull your foot. And I'm telling you, it's like you don't want to wait till you're stuck. But ladies, it's true. We get a lot of women, it's called the dowager's hump. And what happens is those muscles get weaker as you get older. And so calcium starts to deposit to try to strengthen the area to hold your head up. And so you can do exercises at your desk where you just, look up, look to the side, really neck circles, shoulder rolls. You don't have to go buy any equipment. One of the things that we do for you, like when people come into us and they're like, okay, how do I get started? We give you something to do every day. And it's not huge. It's like, less than 5 minutes. But what we actually do is build your line. Like we develop your ability to hold your head on your body. And it's through a
Yeah.
series of exercises that you do consistently. And they include things like arm circles, like glute walks that are it's not done in the common, like you won't just get up and do those, but having someone take you through how to do that and you start to feel the effects in your movement, it changes everything about your movement.
Yeah.
And so for example, we're going to go back to Jim. Jim's had a hip replacement and a bunionectomy, which he wished he wouldn't have done either, but he has. And so we're working, and then now his head's forward. So
Yeah.
instead of being like, oh, it's over for you, no, it's amazing. He's been with us, what, 1 to 2 years?
Yeah.
And now his head is almost on the line. We're still working on it, but wow, like he can stand up and hold himself upright. And now that he's feeling that, he's feeling better in all of his movements. And then, as he continues to work on that, and he checks in really frequently. But guys, I'm telling you, it is, and for ladies also, it's not too late. Even if it started to be there, it's always, you can get back on the line and you start working on that. And then it's part of letting go in your run. So many of our runners, once they really get themselves like in a good line, they're like, oh my gosh, like I can feel the fall. I can feel my running so much better. And it's amazing that they didn't connect any of that with their run. They always come in and tell me they hurt because they have tight hips or
Yeah.
weak glutes or something's not firing. I'm like,
Right.
no, it's really not that.
Well, and what I find fascinating, and I always bring things back to things like karate or playing piano because that's kind of what I learned and stuff. But one of the things they teach you in martial arts is where the head goes, the body will follow. And so it's
Yeah.
one of those ways where Aikido and Judo and Jiu-Jitsu, if you can put their head out of alignment, right? Move it forward, move it back, take it, take it out of the the ready stance, as we call it,
Right.
and they call it the fighter stance. If you can move their head off balance, you can take them off balance. And it's really fascinating when you think about that. And of course, in martial arts, we talk about the fact that that head is runs what 30 to 35 pounds. That's not a bowling ball, guys. That's a very heavy cantaloupe, right?
Yeah.
that you're balancing on this stick. And so when she talks about, like, when you started talking about that putting your head in alignment and making sure that it's over your body, when you're holding, for that millisecond of pose, or for some people it's multiple milliseconds, but ideally when you're holding that pose, that how it does become effortless, just like holding like a pot on your head. Like, how can people do that? Because it the body can hold that, but as soon as you move it off center
Well,
is when it gets
right.
off
And I think,
kilter.
and then I'm going to go back to the overhead work because
Right.
again, let's go back to a lot of runners. Again, they'll do bicep curls and chest press or whatnot. So very rarely do they put their arms overhead. And this is a really interesting. So when I very first started training with Romanoff or pose, I was already doing weight training, weightlifting, and I would do presses. So I would do overhead presses where you start with the weight on your shoulders and you press up. However, I was not doing things where I held weight over my head. So he introduced me to that type of training. And of course, we were doing it for the running. So holding a bar overhead, again, very light, and doing a change of support was the first time I realized, okay, I'm actually not where I'm supposed to be. I didn't realize, my shoulders were back actually. I was a banana. instead, but again, it's perception. I'm telling you, like people think they're at 12 o'clock and I'm like, oh no, your shoulders are at 11 or your hands are at 1. And it's again, that's why we use that video check-in so you can see that. So
Yeah.
him teaching me that was the first time. It also introduced me to the concept of unweighting. I'd never heard that before. And so what happens is, and this is an interesting thing, so many people think core work for runners includes planks. So all these runners for a long time were doing like plank holds. Well, when you're standing up, you're not in a plank. It's important to do work in the position you're going to be in for that movement. So planks are
Right.
amazing. We love planks. However, it wasn't really what we were trying to, need. So people were doing like a lot of plank holds and, sit-ups are really good. There's a lot of great core exercises in 100%. However, if I do everything laying down, when am I going to get that what's called midline stability or that upper body core strength of that holding my head up when I'm upright? See?
Yeah.
So that's what it really opened my eyes to, is that I'd been doing the same thing. I'd been doing tons of sit-ups, tons of push-ups, tons of planks. What was I doing in my running position? Well, I wasn't. So adding that in, it changed everything. And it really helped me feel like what it actually feels like to hold my upper body up. And like you said, then you get really comfortable with that hold. Like models, like you said, walking with that book on their head, or
Right.
women having to carry water overhead. I mean, you get stronger, of course, you get more efficient, and that's what you get better at with this kind of stuff. So when we talk about pressing overhead, again, we're not using weights. We're using like a body bar or a PVC pipe or a broomstick just to help you feel what that should feel like to hold balance overhead. And it's an amazing strengthening for most people because they've never done it before. And it's eye opening, like, wow, I didn't even realize I couldn't hold my hand straight up. Then we're like,
Yes.
just imagine once you can hold your arm up and hold your head up and hold your whole body up, everything feels better. Walking feels better, standing feels better, right? I mean, it's like, oh,
So
it's
basically, when you join RunRX, you don't just learn the movement of running. You also learn posture, and you'll be sitting better, and you'll be standing better, and I can just honestly say you'll have better core strength.
well, sure. Overall, just full body strength.
Full body strength. So if you are interested in RunRX, if this is the first podcast you've ever heard from us, please subscribe to our podcast wherever you listen to it. Share it with a friend. If you're new to RunRX, you can find us at RunRX. That's RUNRX.fit. FIT. We are the prescription to run pain free. Thanks, guys.
Thank you for joining us on the RunRX podcast. If you'd like to know more, join us at www.runrx.fit. And if you have additional questions that you'd like answered on the podcast, email us at support@runrx.fit.